Welcome to the MangaLove channel. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to MangaLove so you won't miss any of the newest stories. Now, let's dive right into today's story. The storm rolled in without warning, heavy and wild, rattling the glass windows of the 24-hour pharmacy. The Atlanta skyline blurred beneath sheets of rain. The streets were slick and empty, except for the occasional flash of headlights cutting through the night. Inside, the world felt smaller. Fluorescent lights hummed above polished tiles, the faint scent of antiseptic and coffee lingering in the air. Brenda Thompson stood behind the counter, her warm brown skin glowing softly under the fluorescent lights, her curly hair pulled into a loose bun with a few strands falling against her cheek. The clock above her blinked 11:43 p.m. Another long night, another storm, another quiet hour with nothing but the rhythm of rain against glass to keep her company. She was used to quiet, used to keeping her mind busy so it wouldn't wander where it hurt, to the breakup that still haunted her, to the years she spent building walls out of self-preservation. Work was safe. Work didn't ask for her heart. The door chimed. She looked up, and the world seemed to shift. A man stepped in, tall, broad-shouldered, a dark coat dripping rain onto the floor. He moved like he belonged everywhere and nowhere at once, calm but commanding, the kind of presence that carried its own gravity. His face was sharp, striking, light brown hair damp from the rain. His jawline was shadowed with stubble, his eyes gray-blue and unreadable. For a moment, all she could do was stare. "Sorry," he said, his voice low and deep, smooth in a way that didn't match the storm. "Didn't mean to drag half the rain in with me." Brenda forced a polite smile. "Don't worry, the floor's been through worse." He gave a small nod, approaching the counter. "You're still open? 24 hours?" Her eyes flicked to the bottle in his hand. Sleeping pills. Rough night. You could say that. His tone carried weight, but not enough to explain. "Can you recommend something that actually works?" She glanced up at him again. There was something about his eyes, controlled but tired, like someone used to hiding chaos behind calm. "Depends on what's keeping you awake," she said softly. He smiled faintly. "Everything." Before she could answer, the door chimed again. Two men entered, hoods up, faces shadowed. The one in front shoved the door shut behind him with a thud. Brenda's stomach tightened instantly. The way they moved wasn't casual. Her instincts screamed, "Danger!" "Hey," she said carefully, "we're about to close." "Shut up." One of the men stepped forward, pulling something from his pocket. The metallic glint under the harsh light froze her where she stood. A knife. "Empty the register." Her breath hitched. The air thickened, the hum of the lights fading into a dull roar of fear. The second man blocked the exit. Brenda's hands trembled as she reached for the register, trying to stay calm. The stranger beside her, the man with the gray-blue eyes, didn't move. "Hey, man," the first robber barked. "You deaf? Step back." Scott didn't even flinch. He turned slightly, his tone calm, almost conversational. "You sure you want to do that?" The man snarled. "I said—" It happened in a blur. The stranger moved fast, deliberate, controlled. He caught the man's wrist, twisted hard, and the knife clattered to the floor. The second man lunged, but Scott slammed him against the counter with a force that rattled the pill bottles on the shelves. Brenda stumbled backward, heart pounding, watching as chaos exploded around her. The first man swung wildly, but Scott sidestepped, striking clean. One hit to the ribs, another to the jaw. In seconds, both attackers were on the ground, groaning. Rain howled against the glass as sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Someone outside must have called for help. Scott stood over them, chest heaving, expression unreadable. Brenda's voice came out as a whisper. You just... He turned toward her, his gaze softening when he saw the fear still in her eyes. "You okay?" She nodded shakily, though her heart was racing. "I think so." He took a step closer, lowering his voice. "You sure?" Something about the way he asked, not like a stranger checking on her, but like someone who needed to know she was safe, made her chest tighten. She met his eyes and exhaled slowly. "Yeah, I'm sure." Police lights flashed through the windows moments later. The officers came, took statements, handcuffed the men, and left. Brenda gave her report mechanically, still processing what had just happened. When it was over, she turned to thank the man who'd saved her, but he was gone. All that remained was the faint trace of his scent, rain, soap, and something warm she couldn't name. She couldn't sleep that morning. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face. The stillness before the storm, the way he shielded her without hesitation. She didn't even know his name, just the way he looked at her, steady, grounding, as if she was the only thing in the world that mattered for that moment. By the next night, the rain had returned. The city glistened again, slick and gray. Brenda moved through her shift like a ghost, her mind somewhere else. The sound of the door chime made her heart jump. Part of her hoped foolishly that he'd come back. And then he did. He stepped in like he'd never left. The same calm confidence in his walk, the same eyes that had been haunting her since last night. He wore a crisp black shirt now, no coat, sleeves rolled up, rain still clinging to his hair. When their eyes met, she forgot how to breathe. "You again," she said, trying to sound casual. "Here to save me or buy something this time?" "Both, maybe." His tone held a hint of a smile. "I wanted to make sure you were okay." "I'm fine, thanks to you." She crossed her arms, though the corner of her mouth betrayed a smile. "Do you always show up out of the rain like some action movie hero?" "Only when it's worth it." The air shifted. It wasn't what he said, it was how he said it. So certain, like he meant every word. For a moment, the rest of the world disappeared. The hum of the lights, the rain against the glass, all of it faded until there was only the space between them. "You never told me your name," she said softly. "Scott." She repeated it, tasting the sound. "Scott." He tilted his head slightly. "And you are?" "Brenda." His gaze lingered on her name as if memorizing it. "Brenda," he said quietly, like it meant something more than a name should. She looked away, her pulse racing. "You don't seem like someone who has trouble sleeping." "You'd be surprised." He smiled faintly, but there was something sad behind it, a shadow she couldn't place. "Try tea," she said, gesturing toward the shelves, "or warm milk." He chuckled softly. "Does that work for you?" "No," she admitted, "but I like to pretend it might." For a while, they just stood there, strangers who shouldn't have felt like anything more. But there it was, that pull, undeniable and dangerous. She wanted to know what he was running from. He wanted to know why she looked like someone who'd stopped believing in happy endings. The rain outside grew heavier, echoing against the windows. "You should get home before the streets flood," she said, trying to sound practical. He hesitated. "Are you walking to your car alone?" "I'll be fine." His gaze sharpened, protective, steady. "Humor me." Minutes later, they stood beneath the awning, the rain cascading just inches away. Her umbrella did little to protect her, and his presence felt too close, too warm. He offered to walk her to her car, and though she knew she should say no, she couldn't. They moved through the parking lot in silence, their steps splashing through puddles. When they reached her car, she turned to him. "Thanks again for everything." He nodded. "Try to get some sleep tonight. I could say the same to you." He smiled, and for the first time, it wasn't guarded. It was real, brief, but real. She got into her car, started the engine, and watched him through the rain-blurred windshield. He stood there, hands in his pockets, the storm soaking him again, a man who looked like he belonged to the rain. And even as she drove away, she knew the truth she didn't want to admit. She'd never forget him, because the only place she'd ever felt safe, truly safe, was in his arms. Atlanta gleamed under morning light, steel, glass, and motion. The rain had passed, leaving the street slick and alive with reflection. Brenda stood behind the pharmacy counter, running inventory, but her thoughts were nowhere near the labels and numbers before her. They were with him, the stranger from the storm. It had been 3 nights since he had last walked in, and she still caught herself glancing at the door whenever the chime rang. She told herself it was silly. He was just someone who happened to be there at the right time, someone who had saved her when she needed saving. But her heart didn't listen. It still remembered the way he had looked at her, the calm in his voice, the quiet power in the way he said her name. She had felt safe, and safe was something she hadn't felt in a very long time. The door chimed again. She looked up, and her pulse stumbled. There he was, Scott Adams, sharp, gray-blue eyes, neatly pressed shirt, dark slacks that hinted at wealth and quiet control. He didn't belong in her small, fluorescent world. He looked like someone from the top of the city skyline, expensive, self-contained, slightly dangerous in the way confidence can be. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. Then he said softly, "You always look this focused when you're saving lives." She blinked, trying not to smile. "You again? Trouble sleeping?" Something like that. He walked closer, each step measured, his presence impossible to ignore. "Actually, I came here to ask for your help." That caught her off guard. "My help?" He nodded. "I need you to pretend to be my fiancé for 1 week." For a moment, she just stared at him. "That's not where I thought this was going." Scott didn't flinch. "I know how it sounds, but it's not a joke." She crossed her arms, skeptical, but curious. "You're serious?" "My family's annual gathering starts this weekend," he said, his tone steady but laced with tension. "It's a big deal. Everyone shows up, everyone asks questions, and everyone assumes they have a right to tell me how to live my life. They've been on my back for years about settling down. I just want peace this time." "And you thought pretending to be engaged would fix that?" "I thought pretending might buy me silence," he said, "at least for a week." Brenda shook her head, half amused, half incredulous. "Out of everyone you know, you chose a woman you met in a pharmacy?" He hesitated. "You're the only one I trust to play it right." Her breath caught. The way he said it wasn't flattery, it was truth. He looked at her like he had already thought it through 100 times, like she wasn't just an option, but the answer. "Scott, I don't even know you." He smiled faintly. "You know enough. You know I'll protect you. You know I keep my word." "And what exactly do I get out of this?" she asked, her voice teasing but her heartbeat racing. "Whatever you want," he said quietly. "Money, time off, a getaway after, you name it." She studied him, the way his jaw tightened when he spoke, the shadow of exhaustion behind his composure. Beneath the expensive watch and the calm exterior, there was something else, a kind of loneliness she recognized too well. "Why me, really?" she whispered. He paused. "Because when I was standing in that storm, you didn't look at me like everyone else does." Her chest tightened. He exhaled. "You looked at me like I was human." The silence between them stretched, thick, magnetic, undeniable. Finally, Brenda said, "1 week, that's it." He nodded once, relief flickering in his eyes. 1 week. 2 days later, she found herself in his car, a sleek black vehicle that moved like silence itself through the winding roads outside the city. The Atlanta skyline faded behind them as they drove toward the family estate, a sprawling property on the outskirts that looked like something out of a magazine. Scott's hand rested on the steering wheel, veins visible under his rolled sleeves. Brenda glanced at him more than once, studying the man who had so easily disrupted her world. He seemed completely at ease, though she could sense tension under the surface, the kind that came from carrying too much for too long. "You're quiet," he said without looking at her. "Still trying to figure out how I got talked into this," she replied. He smirked slightly. "You could have said no." "I tried," she said. "You're just persuasive." He looked over at her, then really looked, and for a brief second, the air between them grew heavy again. "Thank you," he said softly. "Don't thank me yet," she murmured. "We haven't even met your family." The estate was breathtaking, long stone driveways, towering oak trees, soft sunlight filtering through. His family home wasn't just wealth, it was legacy, the kind of place that carried expectations in its walls. When they stepped out, she slipped her arm through his, their first act of pretense. His touch was steady, warm, grounding. For a man who lived in control, he held her like she was the only thing that made sense. Inside, the atmosphere buzzed with laughter, polite conversation, and the clinking of glasses. People turned as they entered. Brenda could feel the weight of their eyes. Scott introduced her with calm ease. "Everyone, this is Brenda, my fiancé." The word fiancé hit her chest like a pulse. For a second, she almost believed it herself. There were polite smiles, curious glances, whispers behind champagne glasses. His mother, elegant but cold, pulled him aside, questioning every choice he had ever made in one look. His brother shook her hand politely, but stared too long, clearly assessing. Through it all, Brenda played her part, warm, kind, composed, even when someone made a cutting remark about Scott's inability to commit. She smiled sweetly and said, maybe he just needed to find someone worth committing to. The room fell silent for a beat, then laughter broke. Scott turned to her, a hint of disbelief in his eyes, followed by something softer, admiration. Later that night, after the guests drifted away, he found her standing on the terrace overlooking the lake, the air cool and sweet. "You didn't have to defend me like that," he said quietly. "Yes, I did," she replied, eyes on the dark water below. "They don't see you, not really." He exhaled slowly. "Most people don't." She turned to him, her expression soft. "I do." The words hung there, fragile and dangerous. He stepped closer, close enough for her to feel his breath, his heartbeat. "You shouldn't." "Why not?" "Because I don't know how to be what you see." "Then don't try to be," she said. "Just be real." For the first time, the walls in his eyes cracked. He looked at her not as a shield or a solution, but as something more, something terrifyingly honest. They stood there in silence, inches apart, the night humming with electricity. "Brenda," he said softly, her name a whisper, a promise. She didn't move, didn't speak. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Tell me to stop," he murmured. She didn't. His lips found hers. Slow, deliberate, almost hesitant at first, then deeper, hungrier. It wasn't a kiss meant to impress. It was a confession of everything he had held back, of everything she had been afraid to feel. When they finally pulled apart, the world felt altered. Air heavier, heartbeat louder, distance non-existent. "This wasn't part of the deal," she whispered. "I know." His voice was rough, real. "But it feels like the only thing that's real." She closed her eyes, trying to steady herself, because she knew, once you fall into something like this, you don't get to walk away the same. That night, she couldn't sleep. Lying in his bedroom, she could still feel his kiss, the warmth of his hand against her skin. Down the hall, he sat by the fire, staring into the flames, wrestling with the same storm inside. You are listening to a narrated story on the MangaLove channel. Don't forget to share your thoughts about today's story. Neither of them knew what would come next, but both knew this: pretending was no longer an act. It was the beginning of something that would either save them or break them completely. Atlanta shimmered under a soft golden haze when they returned. The week at the family estate had ended, but something between them hadn't. What started as pretending had turned into something dangerous, real. Every glance, every touch, every quiet moment had blurred the line between act and emotion until neither of them knew what was true anymore. Scott's black car pulled into the private garage beneath his downtown penthouse. The building stretched high into the clouds, glass and steel gleaming like a promise. Brenda had never seen anything like it. When the elevator doors opened, her breath caught. The penthouse was all glass and open air, city lights spilling through floor-to-ceiling windows, a grand piano in one corner, and the faint scent of cedar and rain lingering in the air. Everything was minimalist, perfect, and cold. "This is where you live?" she asked softly, stepping inside. Scott's voice was quiet behind her. "This is where I sleep. Living's debatable." She turned to look at him. An expensive suit jacket draped over one arm, his tie loose, sleeves rolled. Even here, he looked like a man in control of everything but himself. You can stay in the guest room, he said. Or, he hesitated, his gaze softening, wherever you're comfortable. She smiled faintly. I'll figure it out. He nodded and walked toward the bar, pouring himself a drink. You want something? Water is fine. He handed her a glass, their fingers brushing. That single touch sent a jolt up her arm. She set the glass down quickly, trying to focus on the skyline. From this high up, Atlanta looked like a sea of stars, moving, glowing, alive. The view was breathtaking, but lonely. You really built all this for yourself? She asked quietly. Not for myself, he said, taking a slow sip. For silence. She looked at him, the man who'd walked out of the rain like a savior, who could silence a room just by standing in it. And does silence make you happy? He didn't answer right away. His eyes stayed on the city. It keeps me from hearing things I'd rather forget. There was something in his voice that made her heart ache, a confession wrapped in calm. She didn't push. Instead, she stepped closer, her reflection merging with his in the glass. You don't have to forget everything, she said softly. Some things are meant to stay, even the pain. He turned to her then, and for a heartbeat, neither spoke. The city hummed below, thunder rolling far in the distance. His hand lifted slowly, fingertips brushing the side of her face. Why do you keep showing up in the parts of my life I've tried to bury? He murmured. Maybe they were waiting for someone like me. His breath caught, small, involuntary. Then he kissed her. This time it wasn't tentative. It was fire. It was the collision of two people who'd spent too long pretending not to need anyone. His hands slid into her hair. Hers clutched his shirt, pulling him closer. The rain began again, streaking down the windows like liquid silver, and they moved together as if the world outside had disappeared. He lifted her effortlessly, setting her against the cool glass, lips trailing down her neck. She gasped, the city below spinning in a blur of light and heartbeat. It was desperate and beautiful and real, the kind of moment that rewrites every scar into something worth having. Hours later, when the storm had quieted, they lay tangled in silk sheets, her head resting on his chest. The steady rhythm of his heartbeat filled the silence. Do you regret any of this? She whispered. He brushed her hair from her face, his voice low. Not for a second. Even if this isn't part of the plan. He smiled faintly. This is the plan now. She smiled, eyes drifting shut. For the first time in years, she slept. Not just rested, but slept deeply, safely, without fear. Morning came too soon. Brenda woke to the smell of coffee and sunlight spilling through the glass. Scott stood by the window, shirt half-buttoned, phone in hand. His expression was tense, his voice cold in a way she hadn't heard before. No, the merger goes through next quarter, he said. Yes, I know the board expects me to present stability. That's exactly what I gave them. He turned slightly, noticing her awake. His voice softened. I'll call you back. He ended the call and slipped the phone into his pocket. Morning, she said, smiling sleepily. Morning, he replied, but there was distance in his tone, something guarded creeping back behind his eyes. She frowned slightly. Everything okay? He hesitated. Just work. But she caught it, the flicker of hesitation, the shadow of guilt. She didn't press. Not yet. That evening, while Scott was in the shower, his phone buzzed on the counter. A message preview lit the screen. She didn't mean to look. She just saw, "Glad your fake engagement worked. The merger is secure. Congrats." Her stomach dropped. The words blurred as her pulse pounded in her ears. She scrolled without thinking. A few missed calls, an email subject line that confirmed it all. Adams Holdings, marriage proposal strategy approved. It hit her like cold water. The week at the family estate, the pretense, the deal, the sudden request for her help, it had all been about business. The fake engagement wasn't only about getting his family off his back. It was tied to his company, too. His reputation, his next multi-million-dollar move. and she had been part of it. When he stepped out of the shower, towel around his waist, smiling at her like nothing was wrong, the words tumbled out before she could stop them. "How long were you going to keep lying to me?" Scott froze. "What?" She held up the phone, her voice trembling. "The merger, the strategy. I wasn't just your fake fiancé, Scott. I was your cover story." He went pale. "Brenda, it's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is." Her voice cracked. "Tell me you didn't use me." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing it first. "Yes, it started as a way to protect the deal, but that's not... Brenda, it changed. You changed it. I didn't plan this." She laughed bitterly. "No, you just planned everything else." He stepped closer, desperate. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I've spent my whole life proving myself to people who only care about what I can offer. You're the only one who saw me. I was scared that if you knew, you'd leave before I had the chance to fix it." Tears stung her eyes. "You didn't even give me the chance to decide if I wanted to stay." He reached for her, but she stepped back. "Brenda, please, I can't do this." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Not again. I can't love someone who hides the truth." He froze. Love. The word hung in the air like lightning. Before he could say anything else, she grabbed her bag and walked to the elevator. The doors closed between them, leaving him standing there, soaked in regret. That night, the penthouse was silent again. Scott stood by the window, staring down at the same city that now felt colder, emptier, and endless. Her scent lingered on the sheets, her laughter echoing in his head like a memory he couldn't erase. He poured a drink and didn't touch it. He didn't sleep. He thought about the storm where they met, the way her hand trembled in his, the way she'd smiled at his scars without flinching. He'd never deserved her. He knew that now. As dawn broke, the first light hit the glass, painting him in gold and ache. Somewhere across the city, she was probably getting ready for her shift, pretending she didn't care, pretending she hadn't left a part of herself behind, too. He whispered into the quiet, as if she could hear him through the distance. "I'll fix this. I swear I will." But the city didn't answer. Only the rain did. Atlanta hadn't changed, but everything inside him had. The city pulsed beneath the gray sky, alive with noise and movement, yet Scott felt none of it. His penthouse, once a sanctuary, now felt like a glass cage. The sheets still carried her scent, soft vanilla and rain, but the bed was empty, the air hollow. Days bled into nights. He tried to drown himself in work, in numbers, in deals, but every boardroom felt meaningless. Her voice haunted him. "You didn't even give me the chance to decide if I wanted to stay." He'd lost her, and this time, it wasn't business. It was his heart. Brenda had returned to her rhythm. Long shifts, quiet walks, and nights spent pretending she was fine. The pharmacy lights flickered the same way they had the night she met him. Only now, every shadow reminded her of his arms, his voice, his lies. But heartbreak didn't stop life from demanding attention. A customer needed help. Prescriptions had to be filled. Smiles had to be faked. And yet, sometimes, when she closed her eyes, she still felt his hand on her cheek, the way he looked at her like she was the only real thing in his world. "Don't," she told herself one night, locking up. "Don't go back to that." The rain began again, soft at first, then heavier. She looked up at the dark sky, blinking against the drops. The same kind of night he'd appeared from nowhere. The same rain that had brought him into her life. She didn't see the black car parked across the street until she started walking toward her car. Scott stepped out slowly, no umbrella, rain soaking through his shirt. His eyes found hers through the blur. For a long second, neither moved. Then he crossed the street. "Brenda?" Her heart stuttered. "You shouldn't be here." "I know." He stopped a few feet away, breath visible in the chill. "But I had to see you." She folded her arms. "Why? To fix another deal?" "No," his voice cracked. "To fix us." She turned away, rain sliding down her face like tears she refused to let him see. There is no us, Scott. There was an act, and then there was a lie. He stepped closer. There was never a lie about how I felt. You used me. I used the situation, he said quietly, because I didn't know how to ask for something real. I've built my whole life around control, Brenda, around not needing anyone. And then you came along, and I didn't know how to not need you. She shook her head. You don't get to say that after what you did. I know, he said softly, but I'm saying it anyway, because it's the truth. Something in his tone, raw, broken, stripped of pride, made her chest tighten. I bought out the merger, he said suddenly. All of it. She blinked. What? I signed everything over. The project's mine alone now. The company can't touch it. It's off the books. Why would you do that? He looked at her through the rain, eyes glinting with sincerity. Because I didn't want a single piece of my success to be built on a lie, especially not the lie that hurt you. Her breath caught. He meant it. She could see it in every line of his face. Brenda, he whispered, stepping closer, you made me feel like a man again. Not a deal, not a name, a man. I'll spend the rest of my life proving that to you if you let me. She wanted to be strong, to turn, to walk away, but something inside her cracked. She could feel it in her pulse, in her throat, in the way her body leaned toward his, even when her mind screamed, no. He reached out slowly, his hand trembling. If I'm not worth your forgiveness, that's okay, but please don't doubt that I love you. Her tears mixed with the rain. You can't just show up and say things like that. Why not? Because I'll believe you, she said brokenly. He closed the distance. Then, believe me. The world disappeared again. The rain hit harder. Thunder rolled across the skyline. And when his lips found hers, the ache between them shattered into something softer, something real. She didn't resist. She couldn't. The kiss wasn't a plea. It was a confession, raw and trembling. When they pulled apart, she whispered against his chest, "You still have a lot to prove." "I know," he smiled faintly, his breath warm against her hair. "Just give me the chance." Weeks passed, and this time Scott didn't chase her with promises. He showed up with actions. He walked into her pharmacy one morning, not with flowers or apologies, but with coffee, breakfast, and patience. He waited outside after her shifts, drove her home without asking to come in. He called just to hear her voice, but never pushed when she was quiet. He learned her rhythm, the songs she hummed when she was tired, the books she read during breaks, the way she liked her tea when the rain fell. And slowly, the walls she'd built began to soften. One night after closing, she found him waiting outside again. The air was cool, the city glowing behind him. "You're persistent," she said, a smile tugging her lips. "I'm consistent," he corrected gently. "Big difference," she laughed softly. It felt good to laugh again. "What are you doing here?" "Taking you somewhere?" She frowned playfully. "Kidnapping me now?" He grinned, that rare, disarming grin that made her heart skip. "Something like that." They drove through the city until the lights thinned into quiet streets. He stopped near the edge of the Chattahoochee River, where the skyline shimmered in the distance. A blanket was spread near the water, a lantern flickering beside it. "Scott," she breathed, "you did all this." He nodded, stepping closer. "You once told me the rain made you feel small but alive. I wanted to give you that again without the fear." She looked around. The soft sound of water, the faint hum of crickets, and the lantern glow painting his face in gold. For the first time in a long time, peace settled inside her. He took her hand. "Brenda, I used to think love was a transaction, something earned or negotiated. But you taught me it's the one thing that's supposed to be given freely. You've already given me more than I deserve." Her eyes softened. "Then what are you asking for?" He took a breath, heart in his throat, and dropped to one knee. The small box glistened in his hand. Rain started to fall, just like the night they met. "I'm asking for a chance to spend forever making it right," he said. "Not as the man who saved you or the one who hurt you, but the one who finally learned what love really means." Her eyes filled with tears. "Scott," he looked up at her. "No power, no pretense. Just the truth. I don't want silence anymore. I want you." The world seemed to still. The rain danced softly between them, and when she finally spoke, her voice trembled with a smile. "Yes," he exhaled, breaking into laughter, raw, relieved, disbelieving. He slid the ring on her finger, and she pulled him up into a kiss that tasted of rain, forgiveness, and something eternal. The wedding was small, just close friends, family, and the city skyline glowing behind them. Brenda wore a soft ivory dress, her curls catching the light. Scott couldn't stop looking at her. When the vows came, he took her hands and said quietly, "You were the only thing I didn't have to fight for. You just were, and that's how I knew you were mine." Tears slipped down her cheeks as she whispered back, "And you were the only man who ever made me feel seen, even when I didn't want to be." They sealed it with a kiss, slow, deep, filled with everything they had survived. As the sun dipped below the skyline, Scott whispered in her ear, "I told you I'd prove it." She smiled through tears, "And you did." Later that night, standing on the balcony of their new home, not his penthouse, but a warmer place they'd chosen together, Brenda leaned against him, his arms around her, the city alive beneath their feet. Rain began to fall again, gentle and familiar. Scott kissed her temple. "Guess it's our kind of weather." The night it all began, he looked at her, love and gratitude in his gaze. And the night it never ends. The city lights reflected in her eyes, bright, endless, eternal. And for the first time, both of them knew this wasn't a promise broken. It was the one they'd keep forever. Thank you for listening to MangaLove Storytelling. If you find the story meaningful and enjoyable, please remember to give MangaLove a like and subscribe so you won't miss the newest stories. Wishing you a wonderful day.